What I'm going to show you today is a guitar soloing system that's so simple, it's actually kind of genius, and I wish someone would have shown it to me when I first started trying to play lead guitar. It takes me back to a moment that I'll never forget. I'd already been playing for years, I was in the middle of a gig, and I thought I was just killing it. But a more experienced guitar player buddy of mine stopped me after a set and said, "Charlie, man, you play a lot of notes, but you're not saying anything." And that stung, but it was exactly what I needed to hear, because when I thought about it, I realized that my solos had no real intention. They were just a lot of noodling. Fast noodling, but noodling nonetheless. That's when I realized I had to step back and really dig into how I wanted to approach soloing. And I came up with this simple system that I'm going to share with you today. It's so basic that most guitarists will overlook it, but it's so powerful that it instantly transforms random noodling into melodic, purposeful solos that actually communicate something to your audience. Grab your guitar, open up your mind, let's get into it. So let me start right away by telling you the fatal flaw that I used to have in my playing. I used to play like all notes are created equal, but they're not. Certain notes are more important and they carry more emotional weight than others. There are also notes that set up these most important notes. If you spend most of a solo just running scales, you're giving every note equal time, equal billing. And the notes might be from the right scale over a chord, but all your listeners are going to hear is a blur. And don't get me wrong, I love to play fast and there's a time for that. But for most of the things that we play, we should be choosing notes that create the most feeling and emotion possible. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start off playing triads over each chord in a progression. We're going to add a few other select notes that set up the notes of the triads and make them sound amazing. Then we're going to make up licks. And then we're going to add in color notes and learn to mix them all together into even more licks. You got to stick around because this is going to get good. Step number one, let's start with a chord progression and just play triads over it. Here's the chord progression we're using today. It's mostly in the key of G major, with one exception that I threw in there just to mess with you. We've got G, B minor, A minor, C, E minor. Those are all from the key of G, and then we're going to go to F major. That's what we call a flat 7 major, and it's a songwriting trick that I've heard Elton John and the Beatles use. Then we go back down to C and D, and we're back around to that root G. And now let's talk triads, the 3-note chords that contain a root, a note from the scale a third above the root, and a note from the scale a fifth above the root. These are what we call chord tones, and they're the most important notes of a chord because they give listeners something that feels sonically solid, and they give musicians a chance to outline a chord in their solos. They're the notes we're going to resolve to after we play those setup notes that I mentioned earlier. Now the root, it's literally home base for a chord. The third, it's the most emotional interval because it defines a chord as major or minor. The fifth, well, it's a little less important, but it's still solid and it reinforces the sound of the root. That's where we get power chords. I'm sure you know there are many triad shapes we can play, but we're going to start off with this one, just on the G and B strings, and we're going to use it for each chord today. Here's the shape for G major and the other major triads. We've got G at the 12th fret of the G string, B, or the major third, at the 12th fret of the B string, and we've got D, or the 5th, at the 15th fret of the B string. And now here's the minor shape. This is B minor. We've got B at the 16th fret of the G string. That's our root. We've got D at the 15th fret of the B string. That's our third, and we've got F sharp, the 5th, at the 19th fret of the B string. The first thing I want you to practice is taking these triad shapes through a chord progression over a backing track. You need to learn to do it in time over actual music, and you need to get your ears hearing those triad notes when you hear a chord progression. Let's play through our progression using these shapes, and I'll put up a diagram for each one so you can nail it too. I'm going to play a little pattern with each triad. Notice I put a little vibrato on the 5th or the highest note, and also on the note when I return back to the root. Okay, let's go. By the way, if you like what you're hearing and learning, check out my Patreon page. We get deeper into the things we talk about on YouTube. I put up tabs, backing tracks, and other bonus stuff. So the great thing about triads, and we're only using major and minor today, is that if you play the notes of a triad, you can hear the chords even if there wasn't a backing track being played. I like to call triads chord skeletons, the bones, if you will, of a solo. I think of all the other notes in a scale as tendons and muscles, the things that are attached to the bones and make them move. Bones are the underlying structure, tendons and muscles make bones move. Chord tones, or the triad notes, are the underlying structure of your solos, but you need those setup notes to give your licks movement. So that is step number 2. And there are 2 amazing setup notes right between the notes of a triad, the 2nd and the 4th. Those notes sit between chord tones in the scale. When you play them over a chord, they create a sound that feels unfinished to the listener. It creates emotional tension that wants to be resolved. The 2nd wants to resolve either down to the root or up to the 3rd. Now the 4th wants to resolve either down to the 3rd or up to the 5th. The feeling that the listener gets when you play these notes, the need to hear those notes go somewhere, they're really powerful. And if you learn how to use and exploit them, for lack of a better word, they can add incredible power to the licks you play. Here's another great exercise for you to get this under your fingers. Let's play through the chord changes again, but this time we're going to start on the 2nd, play the 3rd, and then the root of each triad. Now remember, the notes of the G major scale are G, A, B, C, D, E, and F sharp. So over G, we would play A, B, and G. Over B minor, we would play C, D, and B, and so on through the progression. I'll put up diagrams as the chords change so you can see what we're playing over each chord. Let's go. Okay, next variation, we're going to play the 4th, 5th, and the 3rd over each of our triads in the progression. So over G, we're going to play C, D, and B. And over B minor, we're going to play E, F sharp, and D. Let's try that over our changes with the same rhythms we used in the last example. Let's do it. So step 3 in our system, we're going to take these 5-note cells, as we're going to call them, which is the root through the 5th, and we're going to use them to make up simple licks over each chord in the progression. They don't have to be anything fancy. Think David Gilmour, not Joe Satriani. You can play as few as 2 notes, or you can try to squeeze in a bunch. But remember, the main goal here is to try to create some tension by lingering on one of our setup notes, the 2nd or the 4th, and then resolving to one of our chord tones. Here's a few examples for you before I start playing over the backing track. Over the G, we could play as something as simple as starting on the A or the second and lingering there before playing the third and ending on the root. I think that sounds great. Over B minor, we could play the B root, play the second and third, and then bend up the second to the third and linger there before hitting the root and playing that root note again by sliding into it. Those are great sounding little licks. And all I'm doing is playing a few select notes and then using my imagination to add some phrasing and make them come alive. I'll take a pass over the backing track now. Let's see if I can play something that sounds nice. So far we've been concentrating on the first 5 notes starting from each root note in a major scale. So the intervals, the root through the 5th of each one of our notes. For step 4 of our soloing system, we're going to turn things around. We're going to start on a root an octave above the roots that we've been playing on the G string. And we're going to work backwards from that octave down to the 5th. So we'll be playing the root on the high E, the 7th, the 6th, and the 5th. And depending on which root note we can have a major 7th, which is just 1 fret below the root, like G and F sharp. Or we can have a flat 7, which is 2 frets below the root, like B and A. Remember, the notes of the G major scale are G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. And there is one weird pattern to think about here. D is a major triad in the key of G. But counting backwards from D, we get the notes D, C, B, and A. And that C is 2 frets below the D, so it's a minor 7th, or more apt, it's a flat 7. And when we put a flat 7 with a major triad, we get a dominant 7 chord, or what we commonly would just call D7. And we also get the 6th interval to play. That note carries a wide range of emotions also. So I'm going to play over the backing track again. I'm going to use the same rhythmic pattern over each chord so you can really get it in your ears what playing backwards from that octave down to the 5th sounds like. Have a listen. Step 5 in our system, well, you may have guessed, it's going to be putting all our ideas together. Now, there's only so much we can cram into a 15 to 20 minute video. So for the examples, I'm just going to use the shapes that we've already gone over, and licks made up of triads plus the 2nd and 4th, or licks made up of the notes starting with that octave root playing down to the 5th. Now, over some of the chords, I might play one of the triad licks. I might play one of the licks using the octave down to the 5th. Or I might combine the two. Keep in mind, these approaches are exercises to help you learn licks and play through chord changes. In real life, you'd mix these kind of licks in with pentatonic runs, scale runs, blues licks, and so on. But this focus on highlighting chord tones and setting up those chord tones with other notes from the scale, that's a concept that you always want to be focusing on. So let's give mixing things up a try. Here we go. As always, thank you for watching. If you got something out of this video, do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I want to keep growing and I want to have a reason to keep making these lessons. Have fun playing your guitar. Never stop learning. I'll see you soon.